Have you ever truly paused in front of a mirror and asked, not with your mind, but with your soul, am I living my life or merely performing one expected of me? Not the life that wins approval or fits neatly into society's design, but the life that feels aligned with the deepest truth of who I am? This question, though simple on the surface, cuts to the very core of Jung's teachings. It is the question that stands at the threshold between a life of unconscious compliance and a life of awakened authenticity. Carl Jung, a pioneer of the soul's inner architecture, once warned that most people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid confronting their own souls. And yet, it is precisely in this confrontation that freedom begins. We live in a world that thrives on your distraction. Everything around you is engineered to keep you spinning. Routines, roles, endless obligations, subtle pressures dressed as duty. From the moment you open your eyes, the external world rushes in. Expectations from work, family, social roles, the haunting image of success that isn't yours, but you chase it anyway. You are told who to be before you remember who you are. In this carefully curated chaos, it becomes dangerously easy to abandon yourself. And with every instance you silence your needs, every time you override your inner voice to meet another's expectation, you are unconsciously sending a message to your soul. You do not matter. You betray yourself in microscopic ways, ways so small and habitual they pass as normal. Yet somewhere beneath it all, a quiet voice remains. It whispers through unease. It stirs in dissatisfaction. It aches inside moments that should feel fulfilling, but somehow don't. That voice is not confusing. It is your truth knocking. Jung taught that this voice, this presence from the unconscious, is not an inconvenience to be managed, but a compass to be followed. Ignoring it doesn't silence it. It only buries it deeper, where it turns into restlessness, anxiety, and disconnection. The truth is, when something in your life feels off, it isn't a fluke. It is your soul trying to reroute you back to yourself. So now ask yourself with fierce honesty, how many of your recent choices were made from inner truth? And how many were crafted in fear? Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of shaking the illusion of comfort. Jung believed that choices not rooted in your essence create distortion and fragmentation. The further you drift from your center, the more life feels like a maze. This is the hidden cost of abandoning yourself. Not chaos from the outside, but a soul that no longer recognizes the life it's living. This is what happens when you finally choose yourself. You return to the path your soul has been quietly guarding all along. Let us be clear. Choosing yourself is not an act of abandonment toward others. It is not rooted in selfishness, nor is it a rebellion against connection. Rather, it is the quiet reclamation of a sacred inner order. To choose yourself is to finally understand that the greatest gift you can offer the world is a self that is whole. Carl Jung often spoke of this as a necessary confrontation with the self, not the mask, not the social persona, but the authentic being hidden beneath years of performance. Self-love, in this context, is not indulgence. It is not avoidance. It is the anchor of all genuine love. It is the psychic soil from which real connection grows. And without it, we merely imitate intimacy while secretly starving. When you begin to choose yourself, something almost alchemical occurs. Your inner frequency shifts. What once drained you begins to dissolve. The people and situations that once mirrored your self-betrayal start to fade, and in their place, you begin to notice a strange synchronicity. Relationships that reflect your truth, opportunities that echo your soul, and moments that feel magnetically aligned. Jung understood this not as magic, but as the deep law of resonance. Your outer world reorganizes itself to match your inner reality, but this harmony cannot emerge until you face what is unresolved within. To arrive at this state, however, you must pass through a sacred fire, the confrontation with your shadow. The shadow, as Jung taught, is the hidden twin of your consciousness. It carries your denied fears, your forgotten dreams, your suppressed rage, your unspoken longings. Choosing yourself demands that you sit beside these parts, not as enemies, but as fragments of your own soul, calling for integration. And yes, this is uncomfortable. It may unravel your narratives. It may shake the false foundations you've built. But this very confrontation is the doorway to your power. True integration does not happen in a single moment of revelation. It unfolds in the small hours when you choose honesty over approval, rest over performance, truth over comfort. It requires patience, compassion, and a devotion to becoming rather than pretending. But in return, you receive treasures the world cannot give you: clarity that slices through confusion, a compass that points toward purpose, and a peace so deep that even external chaos cannot disturb it. You begin to say no, not out of anger, but from inner authority. You stop explaining yourself, not out of pride, but from self-recognition. And slowly you return to the original truth. You were always allowed to be yourself. The world merely convinced you otherwise. So how do you begin? You begin by listening. Every time your body tightens, your heart hesitates, or your mind spins in confusion, pause. Ask, what part of me is speaking right now? What truth is trying to emerge beneath the noise? Jung reminded us that the answers we search for are not hidden in books or people. They live within, waiting for a moment of silence and a brave heart willing to hear them. The moment you dare to listen and act accordingly, your life begins to reflect your essence, not your fear. There comes a time in every life when a quiet knowing begins to rise from within, the inner voice that whispers, "This no longer fits who I am." And yet, listening to that voice is one of the most difficult things we'll ever do, because to follow it means we must walk away from what once felt safe. Whether it's a relationship that no longer nourishes your soul, a job that slowly wears down your spirit, or a version of yourself you've outgrown, choosing yourself often begins with an unsettling question. Am I willing to lose comfort in order to gain truth? Jung taught that our intuition is not a fleeting feeling. It is the voice of the self, deeper than thought, older than fear, guiding us toward what we are meant to become. But it rarely points us toward what is easy. It often pulls us toward the fire of transformation. And that fire asks us to let go of the roles we played to survive, let go of dreams that were never truly ours, let go of attachments that kept us bound to a lesser version of ourselves. This is why it takes courage to choose yourself. Because when you do, you must also face the grief of leaving behind what no longer resonates. We cling to the familiar, not because it is fulfilling, but because it is predictable. The ego finds safety in repetition, even when it brings suffering. We tell ourselves, better to endure what I know than risk the unknown. But Jung challenges this illusion. He reminds us that the ego's safety is not the soul's sanctuary. Change is not the end. It is the threshold. It is the sacred doorway through which the authentic self begins to emerge. So ask yourself gently, what are you still holding on to that no longer serves the person you're becoming? Is it a relationship born of fear rather than love? A belief inherited from someone else's wounds? A habit that numbs instead of heals? Letting go may feel like a loss, but the deeper loss is sacrificing your inner peace just to maintain what feels familiar. And the more you ignore the call to evolve, the more inner conflict begins to surface. That conflict is not a weakness. It is a sign that your soul is outgrowing the cage your ego built. To choose yourself is to say, I no longer betray my truth for the comfort of others. I will no longer abandon myself for approval. This is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of reverence. For too long, we've been taught that loving ourselves is prideful, that putting ourselves first is a betrayal of those we care about. But this belief has only created generations of people who are depleted, disconnected, and distant from their essence. The truth is, when you choose yourself, you become more available, not less, more present, more honest, more capable of offering real love, because now it flows from a source that is whole. Jung called this synchronicity, the alignment of inner and outer worlds. As your internal reality shifts, your external world begins to reflect it. The fog begins to clear. People who truly see you remain. Those who only needed your silence, your compliance, your shrinking, begin to fall away. And though it may hurt, it is not a punishment. It is a purification. It is life reshaping itself to mirror your authenticity. But this transformation demands radical self-honesty. It asks you to face moments in your past when you said yes while your soul whispered no. To see clearly where you allowed your boundaries to dissolve in order to be accepted. And still, this is not a time to judge yourself. It is a time to awaken, to reclaim, to begin again, this time from truth. There comes a moment, quiet yet irreversible, when something within you shifts. You no longer seek to belong to people who require you to abandon pieces of yourself. You no longer bend to fit into spaces where your soul feels compressed. Those who are aligned with their own truth will never ask you to become less of yourself just to feel more comfortable around them. They recognize the sacred in you because they too have chosen the sacred within themselves. And when you reach this state of alignment, a profound calm replaces the inner chaos. Life, which once felt like a maze of compromises, suddenly begins to flow with clarity and quiet strength. The choices that used to feel like impossible puzzles now arrive with a deep sense of knowing. You begin to realize that peace is not something granted to you by the world. It is something born within, a natural consequence of honoring your needs, defending your boundaries, and living according to the deep truth that stirs in your heart. Carl Jung reminded us that the most meaningful peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of integrity. When you choose to live authentically, something subtle yet powerful happens. You begin to radiate, not in a way that demands attention, but in a way that inspires it. Your courage becomes a mirror for others who have not yet found their own. Your decisions, once doubted by others, become seeds planted in those who are quietly awakening, and without even trying, your authenticity becomes an offering to the world, a quiet revolution against a culture of conformity. Pause for a moment and imagine the texture of your life if you truly released what no longer honors you. What might it feel like to surrender the obligations that exhaust your spirit, the relationships that dull your light, and the unspoken expectations that were never yours to carry? That vision of freedom is not a fantasy. It is the shape your life begins to take the moment you say yes to yourself. When you do, you realize that you were never truly losing anything. You were only making space for what was meant to arrive: meaning, joy, depth, purpose. This is the gift Jung wanted us to uncover, not a life free from pain, but a life rich with alignment. The truth is, transformation does not begin when something outside of you changes. It begins the moment you stop trying to live by borrowed scripts and start listening to the quiet inner rhythm that has always been there. When you choose authenticity, you choose life, not as it was handed to you, but as it was meant to be lived. And from this place, you begin to breathe in a different way, no longer chasing approval, no longer trapped in loops of performance. You begin to feel the pulse of your real self rising. That sacred liberation, difficult to describe, impossible to fake, is the moment you come home. But make no mistake, this path requires courage. It demands that you face not only the external noise, but the inner critic that has long whispered your limits. Yet Jung taught us, the greatest shadows we face are not in others, but in ourselves. That voice of doubt, of fear, of unworthiness is not your soul speaking. It is the echo of a world that never taught you how to love yourself. And every time you respond to it with love, with self-trust, with a decision that says, "I matter," you dissolve the chains of who you were told to be. You become new, not in essence, but in awareness. This is the power of choosing yourself. It is not a single act, but a series of sacred returns. And in that return, you do not just heal, you awaken, and from there, everything quietly changes. Resistance, in its quiet defiance, often cloaks the very doorways we are meant to walk through. It does not arise to block our path, but to invite us into deeper inquiry. And one of the most transformative ways to face this resistance is to stop running from ourselves and begin listening within. Ask yourself, not just intellectually, but with full presence, what do I truly value? What is it that my soul longs to build, not for applause or approval, but for the sake of my own becoming? These are not small questions. They are inner rituals. And when you begin to answer them honestly, something sacred happens. Your decisions start to align with your essence. Clarity grows where confusion once reigned. The fog lifts. Life, once random and reactive, begins to feel orchestrated by a deeper rhythm, the rhythm of your own truth. In this space of inner clarity, something shifts around you. It is as if the world hears your soul more clearly than your words ever could. You begin to attract experiences, people, and pathways that mirror the energy you now carry, not by effort, but by resonance. You no longer have to chase alignment. It finds you when you choose to live in harmony with what matters most to you. Carl Jung often reminded us that the world within is not separate from the world without. What we reconcile internally, life begins to reflect externally. Yet even as you walk this new path, it may at first feel like you are walking alone. Choosing yourself can seem like a solitary act, especially when so many around you are still asleep to their own needs, still seeking validation instead of truth. But this solitude is not abandonment. It is the sacred silence before the symphony. For as you move with integrity, something beautiful begins to unfold. The right people begin to gather. Not because you demanded them, but because your soul called them. These are the ones who will not ask you to shrink, silence yourself, or betray your inner knowing to belong. They will see you, not because you perform for them, but because you are no longer hiding. And they too are learning to live aligned with their truth. From this point forward, life changes, not because the world is suddenly easier, but because you have become clearer. Decisions that once triggered spirals of doubt now come with quiet confidence. Choices are no longer made to please, but to preserve peace. The peace that is no longer earned through others, but remembered within. Jung taught that this inner peace is not a luxury, it is the foundation of a meaningful life. And it does not come from escaping the world, but from facing it without abandoning yourself. But this peace is not just personal, it is luminous. It spills outward. It becomes a quiet revolution. When you live authentically, you become a living permission slip for others to do the same. Your courage becomes contagious. Your clarity becomes medicine. And in choosing yourself, you offer others the mirror to choose themselves too. So, pause for a moment and imagine, what would your life feel like if you released what no longer resonated? What would you reclaim if you let go of the relationships that drained your light, the roles that silenced your soul, the expectations you never agreed to? Can you feel the lightness already stirring in that thought? This is not fantasy. It is within reach. All it asks is that you return to yourself. When you do, you are not losing a life, you are beginning one. And that new life is not built on performance or pretense. It is built on peace, truth, and joy. This is the quiet transformation Jung urged all of us to seek, the moment we stop betraying ourselves and begin walking firmly, gently, into who we've always been beneath the noise. The moment we choose, at last, to be whole. There is a quiet, sacred power that awakens the moment you decide to live in alignment with your truth. This transformation is not limited to your inner world. It radiates outward, touching the lives of those around you in ways words could never capture. When you choose yourself, not from arrogance but from self-respect, you become a living embodiment of authenticity. You no longer need to persuade others or prove anything. Your presence alone becomes a mirror, a symbol that challenges others to confront their own disowned truths. You stop speaking to be heard and instead exist in a way that cannot be ignored. Carl Jung understood this ripple effect of the individuated soul. He recognized that each time one person reclaims their wholeness, the collective psyche subtly shifts. The act of becoming oneself is not a selfish pursuit. It is a sacred responsibility. The more you peel away the masks and step into your essence, the more you contribute to a deeper transformation of the world. Families evolve, friendships deepen or fall away, communities rearrange, and even society begins to reorient around a more awakened frequency, because one person dared to return to their true self. But let us not romanticize the path. This journey is not linear. Some days you will feel grounded, luminous, and fully present in your skin. Other days, confusion will cloud your inner compass, and doubt will whisper ancient fears into your mind. These fluctuations are not failures, they are invitations. Jung believed that what we resist in the unconscious returns as fate. So, when the uncertainty arises, it is not there to destroy you, but to initiate you into greater clarity. These moments call for reflection, not retreat, for stillness, not surrender. Each setback is a doorway, asking you to shed another layer of illusion and move closer to the soul. And when you begin to say yes to yourself, consistently, courageously, you will notice something miraculous. You are no longer walking alone. You will find companions, signs, books, conversations, and synchronicities that seem to meet you right where you are. These are not random. They are affirmations from the unconscious and the universe that you are on the right path. A video like this reaching you at precisely this moment is not a coincidence. It is a whisper from the unseen, confirming that your return to self is unfolding exactly as it should. You may not yet see where it leads. But one thing is certain. The more you honor your inner voice, the more your outer world reflects your alignment. The noise quiets, the confusion softens, and slowly you begin to feel at home, not in a place, but in yourself. So let this be your moment. The moment you stop asking for permission, the moment you stop negotiating your worth. Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That journey begins now, not tomorrow, not when others approve, but in the breath you take to say yes to yourself. Because the world does not need another person pretending. It needs you, whole, honest, awake, the version of you that only you can be. And when you become that, everything changes, not just for you, but for everyone who witnesses your light. And so we arrive at this sacred threshold, the quiet space between what was and what can be, a space that calls not for more striving, but for inward listening. This is the moment to pause and truly reflect. Let the words you've just encountered settle not only in your mind, but in the deep unspoken chambers of your being. Ask yourself with honesty, which aspects of my life reflect the essence of who I truly am? Which ones feel like borrowed masks, heavy with expectation? What am I still holding on to that no longer serves my becoming? And what could finally be possible if I gave myself full permission to live in alignment with the soul I came here to embody? Carl Jung taught us that the journey toward wholeness begins not with grand declarations, but with small, courageous steps, acts of inner alignment that accumulate into transformation. Every choice you make in favor of your authentic self, no matter how subtle, is a declaration of worth. It is a quiet rebellion against the parts of the world that conditioned you to shrink. It is a whisper from the self, the archetypal core of your being, reminding you that becoming who you are was always the task. And here you are, standing in that unfolding. But do not mistake this path as one meant to be walked alone. The road toward individuation is often winding, but never solitary. You are part of something larger now. This space, this community, this channel was created not just to inform you, but to hold you, to remind you that your struggles are not signs of failure, but evidence of your awakening. Each message is an anchor, each video a mirror, and each moment of resonance a sign that your soul recognizes something it has long yearned to remember. If something in today's message stirred your heart, do not let that flicker fade. Let it move through you, and then beyond you. Share this message with someone who may be standing at their own edge, someone who feels lost in the noise, someone who has forgotten their voice, someone who needs this exact moment of clarity to begin again. You never know how far a single act of sharing can ripple. Every comment you leave, every like, every act of engagement is not a transaction, it is participation in something deeper, a collective remembering, a gathering of those brave enough to seek not comfort, but truth. Imagine what we could co-create if more people, just like you, chose to live from a place of soul integrity. Imagine a world where authenticity becomes the new currency, where courage replaces conformity, where the unseen parts of us are no longer hidden but honored. That world begins not with policy, but with presence, not with permission, but with the power to say, I choose myself. So now I turn to you. What part of this message echoed through your heart? What single step will you take today to honor your essence, to return to your center, to say yes to the life that's been quietly waiting for you to arrive? Your story matters. Your voice matters. And when you speak from your center, you give others permission to do the same. If you found meaning here, make sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell so this reflection continues to meet you exactly where you are. Together, let's bring this inner movement to every soul still searching in silence. Let us become the living proof that the greatest revolution begins with the radical, beautiful act of choosing to be fully and unapologetically yourself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. But most of all, thank you for being part of this collective awakening. a rising tide of those ready to live from truth, not fear. Never forget, you are not alone. And your life does not begin the day others finally see you. It begins the moment you choose to see yourself. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.